I have a background as a poker player, so playing with money is something that I always enjoyed. So I thought, this is great, and because I had this background as a poker player, I could keep my head very cool. Or you're kind of building a project not just from like, okay, we are a business, we build a product, and we now roll out features because we think that is good for business.
Hello and welcome to Voice of Crypto. We are reporting live from Zebu Live, and I have very interesting guest Robin today on the podcast. So welcome on the podcast, Robin.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Good. So Robin, the first question which I ask all my guests, that's a standard question, is how did you get into Web3? Do you remember that incident which got you into Web3?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a very good question because actually I bought Bitcoin in 2012 or 2011.
Wow.
I mean, not much. Sold it as well, but I got exposed to blockchain very early on, but I wouldn't consider myself back then as a Web3 person, right? But what actually happened is that I think when 2020 came and people were staying more at home during lockdown, I got interested into first Bitcoin by a friend that told me, the Bitcoin halving is happening. This is what historically has happened to Bitcoin. And I then remembered that I bought Bitcoin for $10, per Bitcoin. So I was like, it might be time to look into this. But Bitcoin in itself never really interested me as much, even though it's the gold standard. But what got me into it was DeFi summer was happening that summer, and suddenly I saw different applications of crypto happening with DeFi. I started playing around and I was like, this is really cool. And I have a background as a poker player, so playing with money is something that I always enjoyed. So I thought, this is great, and because I had this background as a poker player, I could keep my head very cool. So a lot of newbies that are exposed to DeFi don't know what to do, or exposed to crypto or trading. For me, it's more like, I understand the dynamics, the volatility. So that's what got me interested first. Then, I think it was October 2020, the same friend showed me an ICO that was happening on about the Flow blockchain. And I started looking into what is this blockchain, and that's when I got exposed to NFTs. Another great concept. And I started playing around again with NFTs, and bought some NBA Top Shot basketball cards. And I started thinking, this is actually an application that it can be applied in the Web2 world for a lot of companies. So at my previous job, I started actually talking about NFTs and creating some proposals on how we could integrate it into the product. And fast forward to 2021, bull market happens. One of my friends said, didn't you have those NBA Top Shot cards? I was like, yeah, I did, but I hadn't looked at it for months. And I then basically opened my account and saw these, these JPEG files. And it wasn't not JPEG files, they were movies or short videos. They went out 10,000x or whatever it was, like crazy numbers. And that got me really interested. And then, obviously, talked a lot within our friends group. We had quite a big group of friends that were interested in crypto and in investing. Everyone started looking at ICOs and stuff. But what we did realize was that the content, the quality of content around those projects that we were interested in to invest in, there was a lack of. We had to do really deep research and very often reach out to teams to understand, to get all the information that we wanted. So that got us to an idea of, let's create content around early stage crypto projects. So 3 of us started a YouTube channel, which is called Altcoin Edge, which is the same name as that our Web3 marketing agency has right now. And we started covering those projects. And that's how we rolled into Web3. And from there, basically, we built our own community with our YouTube channel. Very high engaged community. If you go on now, you will see that people are chatting every day about like either opportunities, what's happening in the markets, even in the bear. There's a lot of engagement still happening. But we kind of took away from it how to effectively build a community. And within Web3, community building is a very crucial part. And the projects we were speaking to when we were actually doing our content on YouTube quite often voiced to us that community building was a need they had, and they struggled with it. So we then started offering services for those projects to help them out with community building, social media, getting like exposure, social presence, because we all had like marketing backgrounds, and we grew our YouTube channel and a community, and that's how we got into Web3 really.
Understood. So interesting story of how you stumbled upon and how the whole journey started. So tell our audience, what has been your background before getting into Web3, and now what is that you're building? What is the vision, and how do you see the whole industry currently?
Yeah, so my background before Web3, how far can we go back?
As far as you remember.
Well, it's interesting. When I was young, I was very good in sports and I was very good in chess.
Okay.
That led me to having to make a decision between the two. And I went for sports. I was playing a sport called handball. I'm from the Netherlands, so I'm actually European, and quite popular sports. Played on the highest level in the Netherlands for a while. Got a knee injury while I was studying, and I was studying law back then.
Wow.
And got into while I was having an injury, I through some friends got into poker, and because I had this kind of affinity with chess, I believe I got this love from poker. Basically, I got hooked to poker. Played it for maybe 8 years. Then decided, okay, it's very monotonous type of. Like if you do it for your living, it's always the same. I want to do something else, but what could I do, right? So because I had a gap in basically, my CV, I was self-sustaining for years. So I started to look into companies I could work for, and that is how I found my way into online betting, or specifically online poker, because I knew that area very well. And back then, there was a poker brand that was actually looking specifically for people that played, because they built a new product and they were kind of trying to be disruptive, so they needed to have this core understanding of what are these poker users looking for, and what does work and what doesn't work. So rolled in that industry, and back then my manager was a marketing manager. Got then exposed to marketing in that industry. And then over the course of like 7 years, had like various different marketing roles. Once changed company. And then we come back to how I got into Web3. So it's been an interesting ride.
Correct. So from chess, poker, marketing to a marketing agency, it has been an amazing growth for you, amazing story for you. And how has the transition been? And how, you have done law, you have played poker, chess. How does this all fits in your current role when you're building as an entrepreneur?
So it fits in really well because Web3 is very dynamic. The previous industry I worked in was very dynamic. Before that, my job was very, very dynamic and very volatile. So it fits really well with Web3 in terms of I have to be a creative thinker. I have to spot trends. I have to recognize patterns, to be able to come up with the right marketing strategies. There's a lot of overlap. I don't want to say too much because we don't want too much regulation.
Correct.
But like there is a lot of overlap between, let's say, trading, investing, poker, even something like chess, I think. So yeah, I've always been a strategic thinker. I like it. And the marketing skills that I build up are very applicable to Web3 because one of the things I do think, community is really important in Web3, but that also is really important in poker. So there's a lot of overlap in, how these communities evolve. And the interesting part about it is that I've seen that for a decade. So I see some similarities with how basically the interest in the space goes up and drops and comes back, and you see that this is very similar in online poker. So, and then the law part, I think, to be very honest, when I was very good in sports, and I actually thought back when I decided to do law that I only do it because I had to, but it was for me a choice between law and psychology. In hindsight, I think psychology would have fit really well with poker, but the good thing I think as a law student is that you have to read a lot, you have to do a lot of research. And that helped us, I think, with crypto, because in crypto we need to do a lot of research. So for me, to dive into like white papers and stuff and to do proper research is something maybe, I gained some skill from like my time as a law student.
Correct. And you spoke about building a community in Web3 is very important, Tom. And a lot of our viewers are new entrepreneurs who are getting into Web3. So one is, why do you think community building is important? And if you could give 3 tips to our people who are watching this, what would be your 3 tips in building?
Yeah, like community building is important in Web3 because the relationship between founders, projects, and the users, or often it's not only users, it's also people that want to invest in something or want to be just part of something or belong to something. The relationship is very different than in Web2, right? I just had a talk about like community and the role in Web3, and we were talking about how there is an interaction between you're kind of building a project not just from like, okay, we are a business, we build a product and we now roll out features because we think that is good for business. In Web3, from like a founder's perspective, you start your business with a problem that you want to solve, and then that all is tailored towards basically the users of Web3, right? And to properly build that, you kind of need to be able to communicate and understand the feedback of your potential users to be able to cater to them. And that's a very different relationship, I think, than in Web2, because in Web2, those users, they don't really feel they're part of the product. B, they're not really invested most of the times, right? Like founders wouldn't even speak to them. And, there's only so many early kind of startups that users really understand, like, okay, this is an early startup, maybe I can have, more skin in the game here, right? So the dynamics are really different. And then as well as, Web3 is very innovative, and also what you see is that the ethics of what's being built, like, kind of means that it's for the people, With Web3, I very often feel like it's for the people, and if you don't create a community in Web3, what very often happens is someone else just creates an unofficial community channel for your product. Like, so even if you didn't ask for a community, very often it will be created. And you just don't have that anywhere else.
Correct.
So you can't really get around it, I think. But then from a marketing perspective, it's also something where there are a lot of early stage projects, and to get traction, you kind of need an initial traction. And because the ease of getting community in Web3, and also because it's quite hard to use traditional methods to promote crypto. You know, for a lot of products, it's even a no-go in a lot of areas. It's way more, I would say, network effects, and community fits really well in that. You know, when people are part of the community and they believe in a product, then, you know, there's more word of mouth. They become advocates, and, you know, we don't really rely as much on the traditional channels. So you kind of need it as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Amazing. And what are your? I mean, we are obviously in a bear market currently, and hopefully get into bull market. What are the 3 trends which you're anticipating from your understanding of the market from when you talk to projects?
So for sure, you could see it like last week, is that it was you know, a little pump in the last few days, like little pump in Bitcoin. Like at some point the market will get more traction. We see that there are things put in place like ETFs and stuff that will actually, you know, build the foundations for the next push up, right? Meanwhile, we also see that crypto is being restricted for banking and stuff, which kind of what it does is, you know, you have to wonder, like, okay, so it's they're restricting it for consumers, but at the same time institutions are actually betting on it, getting involved. So what happens is you get like a shift in participation, what eventually kind of will drive the next run, I think, from an institutional point of view. And then obviously the retail users is, as always, quite late to the game,
Correct.
right? So and you will see them probably, you know, there will be like some softening in certain things. But what we will see for sure is another run up. What we will see for sure is more regulation and restrictions. But there are areas like DeFi that will, in my opinion, will have a total makeover, where very likely real world assets will become like a next narrative in that area. And, you know, other kind of financial products that, like commodities and stuff, that will be in some way tokenized. So that's what I see on that side. With the NFT side, I do think there will be way more Web2 businesses going or tapping into Web3. And the reason for it is to get that little community effect. You see that a Starbucks, a Reddit, you know, are playing around with it. Like, I know from working in Web2 that even in Web2, when you've got community, it really adds to your bottom line, because basically you improve your retention, short to say. So we will see that happening. We will see that more Web2 companies exploring how they can increase the retention, the loyalty with the consumers with like a little Web3 touch. You know, most likely trying to not make it very raw Web3, but they will definitely find ways to find some applications to just add value to users. And users are, you know, they're open for it. We see it with Reddit. You know, the only thing is we need to do it in the right way. I do think we can learn from what we've seen with in the gaming sector, where actually the gamers didn't really like the introduction in NFTs.
Correct.
And I don't think they don't like it, they just don't like how it was presented and what was presented to them as being this new thing that everyone should just jump into. But I think when they see value and when they experience the value of NFTs, they will get on board. But probably it will not be called NFTs in that sense. So with NFT companies, for the third point, I think is they will get more mature. They start looking in other things apart from launching a collection of art or designs. They will be looking into how can we drive revenue, and NFT is part of this. So that's what I think.
Amazing. And Robin, thank you very much for coming on our podcast. Any last thoughts which you would like to share with our viewers here?
Subscribe. Where we run a YouTube channel, so always make sure to subscribe to the channel when you enjoy the content. Give a like, leave a comment, and check out our community.
Amazing, and thank you very much for coming on this podcast, and we wish all the best to you, Robin.
Cheers, thank you.